Our story opens beneath a clear and beautiful sky. A monk speaks to someone, questioning if they really want to know about Yeonho. This monk is no ordinary figure. He's introduced as Master Musin, known as the Living Buddha. In front of him stands a skinny scholar who eagerly expresses his desire to learn more about Yeonho. He explains that he's currently compiling records to document Yeonho's life and legacy. With an awkward smile attempting to mask his unease, the monk begins to speak. He describes Yeonho, officially known as the Radiant Martial Sovereign, as a man of great virtue, kindness, and moral integrity. The monk even claims that Yeonho must have been sent by Buddha himself. The scholar's eyes light up with excitement. He immediately begins scribbling down notes, confirming it's just as he suspected. He then asks the monk about Yeonho's daily life. What kind of man was he truly? The question clearly rattles the monk. His composure cracks. The calm facade vanishes. Suddenly, he explodes in frustration, unleashing curses at the very mention of Yeonho's name. It's so shocking coming from a monk that the startled scholar practically falls out of the sky. The scene shifts abruptly to the Hube Penglan. The scholar is now being violently thrown out of the Pang clan residence. We're introduced to the furious supreme elder of the Pang clan, Pang Dojuk. Upon hearing Yeonho's name, the elder erupts with rage. He demands to know why a miserable lowlife like the scholar would even dare to bring up that name in his presence. He doesn't stop there. The elder immediately commands his people to bring out a whole bag of salt and scatter it around the area where the scholar had stood, as if to purge the very memory of Yeonho's name. The scholar, shaken to his core, is overwhelmed by the identical reactions he keeps encountering. No matter where he goes, people become hostile and disturbed the moment he mentions Yeonho. Yet, Yeonho, this same man everyone seems to hate, was once hailed as the Radiant Martial Sovereign. We are reminded of his grand reputation, a legendary figure who ended an era of chaos. He was celebrated as a paragon of virtue, a gentleman, a chivalrous warrior, and by some, the greatest martial artist who ever lived. Still puzzled, the scholar continues his journey, using a Qigong technique to travel swiftly. As he moves, he reflects deeply on why everyone avoids speaking of Yeonho. As a historian, he feels responsible for uncovering the full truth, even the parts buried in shame or secrecy. And now, he believes he might finally find a reason. Next, we meet the divine Mad Dog, a notorious figure among beggars. The moment he hears that the scholar was chased out of both Shaolin and the Pang clan, he bursts into uncontrollable laughter. The scholar confirms it, sharing that wherever he went, he faced nearly the same kind of reaction. Every time he brought up Yeonho's name, he doesn't even get to finish the sentence before the Mad Dog interrupts him. He declares that it's no surprise people respond like that. The scholar, caught off guard by this sudden and confident reaction, is stunned. Then, the narrative formally begins. 100 years ago, in the Guangdong Wai clan, lived a boy named Yeonho, known in his youth as Wonho. Far from being a hero, he was considered the worst kind of person. We're taken back to when he was just 12. Young Wonho is seen half asleep, mumbling about his dream to become the strongest. From Mad Dog's point of view, there was once a boy with a grand ambition of becoming the greatest under the heavens. Raised in a martial clan, he was immersed in the values of chivalry from an early age. He already understood what it would take to reach the top, relentless effort. There was, however, one problem: he just couldn't get started today. We see Wonho standing, staring at the sunset. He looks deep in thought, but moments later pulls the blanket over himself again and lies down. He laments how today was supposed to be the day he started laying the foundations for greatness. But alas, he decides it's better to get a good night's sleep and begin tomorrow. Suddenly, footsteps echo in the hallway. Someone enters the room, calling for Yeonho to get up. The command is repeated, this time louder and angrier. Yeonho sluggishly rises from bed. Now we meet his father, the patriarch of the Guangdong White clan, Wi Yeonho. Also known as the righteous chivalrous swordsman, he sternly asks his son if he even knows what time it is. Yeonho casually replies that he saw the sun. His father points out that despite seeing the sun, Yeonho is still in bed. Yeonho cheekily argues that the sun is setting, so technically it's still sleep time. His father grows more frustrated and asks how long he's been holed up in his room. Yeonho guesses, was it 2 days? Maybe 3? He settles on 2. But the truth hits hard. It's been 4 full days. His father calls him a useless brat, appalled that Yeonho has been lazing around for that long, wrapped in a blanket. He even jokes that not even a bear would lie still for that long, without turning over from the sweat. Trying to deflect the scolding, Yeonho laughs nervously and claims he does get up every now and then. That only angers his father more. Yeonho then tries to explain he meant to train today, truly, but each time he opened his eyes, the sun was already setting. And of course, when the sun sets, it's bedtime again. One must rest to train early the next morning, right? Fed up with the excuses, his father explodes in rage. He flips the bed over, yelling that today he will finally fix his son's rotten attitude once and for all. From Mad Dog's perspective, the scene is both ironic and amusing. He comments with a pun, "Today, in the mighty Guangdong Wi household, the sun was already setting." The scene transitions to the Wi clan's administrative office. There, the patriarch sits visibly stressed. The administrator, Zhou Bang, gently inquires whether the second young master is the source of his troubles. The patriarch confirms it. Who else would it be? Zhou Bang tries to reassure him, saying Yeonho will eventually grow up and mature. But the patriarch blames himself. We are then given more context. When Yeonho was just 2 years old, Zhang Han had left on a martial dual pilgrimage. He had expected to be gone for only 2 years. But fate had other plans. Caught up in unexpected events, he ended up wandering for 8 long years. Though he returned a famed warrior with the honorary title of the righteous chivalrous swordsman, the cost was great. By the time he came home, everything had changed. His once gentle wife had grown fiercer than a tiger, and the son he had thought would turn out just fine had become a hopelessly lazy sloth. Back in the present, Zhang Han sighs deeply, consumed by regret. Zhou Bang tries once more to reassure him. Surely, there must still be a way to turn things around. The patriarch, upon hearing something vague, asks for clarification. The administrator reminds him of an important person who is returning soon. At first, the patriarch doesn't understand who he means, but quickly realizes the implication. The administrator is referring to someone returning after 3 years at the academy. The patriarch gives a knowing smirk. He's reminded of the only person Yeonho genuinely fears. At that moment, someone quietly arrives behind Yeonho. Yeonho suddenly feels uneasy, like a chill ran down his spine. When he turns around, he sees his older brother, the eldest son of Guangdong's Wi clan, Sanho. Sanho casually asks Yeonho how long he's been asleep. Yeonho, clearly caught off guard and nervous, asks when Sanho got home. Sanho replies by pointing out that he asked first. Yeonho scratches his head awkwardly, unable to respond. Sanho fixes his gaze on him, prompting Yeonho to blurt out that things aren't as they seem. He claims he trained hard early that morning and only napped because he was tired. He insists it's true. Sanho then asks if Yeonho really trained, and Yeonho confirms it. To check his progress, Sanho tells him to use a technique on a nearby candle, wanting to see how much Yeonho has improved in 3 years. Yeonho reluctantly readies himself with a sword. Sanho, watching him hesitate, urges him to continue. Yeonho tries to stall, pointing out that they're indoors and implying it might be unsafe. Sanho firmly assures him it's fine and tells him to demonstrate what he has. Yeonho begins preparing and attempts to perform a sword move, the soaring dragon technique. He strikes, but the candle remains untouched. Realizing the move failed, Yeonho panics internally. Sanho, disappointed, remarks that after 3 years, one should have mastered such a technique and moved on. Instead, Yeonho seems to have regressed. Later, the family gathers in the dining hall for dinner. Yeonho feels uneasy and certain that the food will only give him indigestion. The patriarch asks Sanho about life at the martial academy and whether he faced any challenges. Sanho responds that everything was fine. In fact, difficulties are essential as they help one grow. The patriarch commends Sanho's perseverance and acknowledges the hardships he must have endured. Sanho humbly returns the sentiment, saying his father had it harder being away from home. Then the patriarch asks if there are any other issues. Sanho brings up one, concerning Yeonho. The matriarch asks what it is, and Sanho responds that he believes Yeonho should be taken to the martial academy. This catches everyone off guard, especially Yeonho, who is overwhelmed by fear and anxiety. The scene shifts, with the narrator known as the Mad Dog, noting that even well-known martial figures like Master Muzin and Pang Dojuk react strongly at the mention of Hae Yeonho's name. He hints that this moment was the start of something significant, though no one could have guessed that the lazy Yeonho would one day make a name for himself. And so, Yeonho ends up being sent to the academy, mostly against his will. His family, especially his younger sister Warren, is emotional. She cries and begs him not to go. Their father jokes lightheartedly, encouraging him to return as a man. Yeonho tries to console his sister, promising to come back. From Mad Dog's view, the journey of Sanho and Yeonho seemed smooth, at least for Sanho. During the journey, Yeonho asks if they're nearly there. Sanho tells him there are 10 more days left. This shocks Yeonho, who's clearly exhausted. Sanho adds that they could have arrived in 5 days if Yeonho knew how to ride a horse. Yeonho points out that he's never ridden before. Sanho clarifies that he wasn't blaming him, just explaining. Later, Yeonho asks to take a break, mentioning how steep the path is and how much pain he's in. As they travel, Yeonho spots people lying beneath a tree and suggests they join them to rest. Sanho takes a closer look and suddenly appears alarmed. He dismounts to inspect the bodies. Yeonho, confused, asks what he's doing. Sanho reveals that the people are already dead. He shows Yeonho evidence of a martial technique called the flower indulging palm. It used to be known as the crimson flower palm, but became infamous due to a criminal named Kwok, who committed crimes using this technique. Yeonho, shocked by the mention of a rapist, asks if that person is nearby. Sanho explains that Kwok targets women climbing the mountains, and based on the situation, he likely ambushed this group while pursuing a woman who may still be in danger. Sanho tells Yeonho to stay put while he goes to investigate. Yeonho protests, upset that he's being left alone with the corpses. But by the time he reacts, Sanho is already gone. Frustrated and anxious, Yeonho looks around. Surrounded by bodies and growing storm clouds, he feels helpless. As the rain starts falling, he begins panicking, calling out for Sanho. He wonders what's taking so long and whether something bad has happened. Worried, he starts trying to move the bodies onto a horse, thinking he can't leave them to become food for animals. But the horses resist. Then lightning strikes, and in the commotion, one of the horses kicks Yeonho, sending him tumbling down a hill. When he wakes up, sore and muddy, he curses the horses. He finds himself at the entrance of a cave and is relieved to have found shelter from the rain. Soon after, the horses arrive too. He ties them up and scolds them, though he knows he can't do anything more. Looking at his soaked clothes, he complains about the situation and thinks that this is why he prefers staying home. He marks the cave entrance in case Sanho comes looking, then lies down to rest. After some sleep, Yeonho wakes briefly and hopes that nothing bad has happened to his brother. He reassures himself that Sanho is strong and will be okay, then goes back to sleep. Later, an unusual blue light begins to appear around Yeonho. The light gently lifts his sleeping body and carries him away, eventually taking him through an invisible barrier. Yeonho wakes up again, disoriented. The space resembles the cave he was in, but something feels different. He wonders if he somehow rolled deeper inside while asleep. Then, a mysterious voice addresses him, calling him a fated human. Yeonho, startled, backs up in fear and notices a glowing blue spear. The voice welcomes him to a place called the Fated Place, and refers to Yeonho as the successor of his radiant sword. Yeonho, confused, asks if the voice is coming from the glowing object. The voice confirms, explaining that its speaker has long transcended the physical world and is communicating from beyond time and space. He tells Yeonho to accept his will and lead the world. Yeonho reacts fearfully, mistaking the voice for a ghost. The voice reassures him that he is already dead. Only his will remains, left behind for someone who might arrive and be worthy to inherit it. Yeonho recognizes the setup: a remote cave, an old man's voice, a final will. He starts wondering if this might be a destined opportunity. Maybe, he thinks, This is the reward for his suffering and a way to avoid the harsh martial training. The voice explains there's no time to waste. He tells Yeonho to inherit his sword technique, train relentlessly, and one day write the new morals of the world. If Yeonho has his bloodline, then he should have a talent. With 30 years of dedicated training, Yeonho might eventually replicate his skill. Hearing the time span, Yeonho reacts with disbelief. He immediately rejects the offer, saying he's not interested in training for 30 years and suggests the voice find someone else. The voice pauses, clearly not expecting that answer, and asks why. Yeonho says he'd rather give it up than spend the next 30 years stuck there. Back in Mad Dog's narration, he reflects on this unusual event. He says this strange encounter was the beginning of Yeonho's transformation. The moment when the boy once dismissed as lazy started down a path that would eventually make him famous. Yeonho tells the old man that he doesn't believe this is fate and suggests he find someone else, then leaves. The old man calls for him to wait. When Yeonho turns back, he sees the light forming into the shape of an old man. This is the first appearance of Baek Muhan. Seeing him, Yeonho concludes he was right all along. The old man is a scammer. The old man reacts to this accusation, questioning how Yeonho could call him that. Yeonho explains that the old man pretended to be something else at first, only revealing his true nature when his act failed. The old man denies pretending and explains that he is a spirit who has left his physical body. Yeonho doesn't believe it and tries to hit him, but his hand passes through, causing him to fall. Surprised, Yeonho realizes the old man might really be a ghost. The old man clarifies this is a rare technique called the spirit transmission arts, used only by extremely high-level martial artists. Yeonho casually calls such people ghosts, frustrating the old man, who insists he's not one. Back with Mad Dog, he tells a scholar that this is how Yeonho met his master. The scholar questions whether spirit transmission arts really exist. Mad Dog confirms it's a technique mastered only by the most elite. The scholar then asks who among martial artists can use it. Mad Dog brings up the Sword Emperor. The scholar immediately recognizes the name. He's known as the strongest in history, head of the Baek clan, and a legendary figure. Mad Dog confirms that Baek Muhan, the Radiant Sword, later known as the Sword Emperor, was Yeonho's master. The scholar is surprised since the Sword Emperor lived 300 years ago. Mad Dog agrees, saying the Sword Emperor belonged to a long-forgotten era. Still, it's true that he trained Yeonho. The scholar assumes Yeonho must have begged to become the Sword Emperor's disciple. Mad Dog corrects him. It was the Sword Emperor who sought a disciple after centuries of being ignored by his own descendants. Back in the cave, Yeonho asks the old man why he's overreacting and insists again he can't learn from him. The old man closes the entrance, trapping Yeonho. He explains that with Yeonho's current skill, he can't move the thick stone gate. But if Yeonho learns his martial arts, he'll be able to slice through it easily. Not convinced, Yeonho takes out a sword and starts scraping the wall. The old man is surprised and asks what he's doing. Yeonho replies that he's digging, since even a stone wall can be worn down with metal over time. He estimates it'll take a year or two. The old man is taken aback that Yeonho is willing to spend that long. Yeonho jokes that it's shorter than the 30 years of training the old man suggested. Frustrated, the old man realizes he can't even punish Yeonho. He hovers and tries to persuade Yeonho to learn, promising not to disappoint him. Yeonho still refuses, saying he doesn't like him. The old man offers a deal, leave after 20 years. Yeonho lies down and says 20 is too long. He would consider it if the old man had said 3. The old man, trying to stay calm, questions Yeonho's expectations. Even the greatest masters couldn't achieve that. Yeonho shrugs and says maybe it just isn't meant to be. The old man, overwhelmed with frustration, finally proposes 5 years, vowing to make Yeonho the strongest in the world. That makes Yeonho pause. He reflects that maybe this old man really was the strongest martial artist. Yeonho agrees to train. Back with Mad Dog, he explains that Yeonho didn't know the old man's identity. It was unfortunate that the legendary master ended up with someone so lazy. Meanwhile, the old man is frustrated that Yeonho sleeps all day. Yeonho argues he's human and needs sleep, unlike the spirit. Baek Muhan grumbles, but encourages Yeonho to train. Still, Yeonho trains only lightly, prompting Baek Muhan to estimate it'll take 50 years at that rate. Yeonho asks if there's an easier way. The old man says it's already as easy as it gets. Yeonho thinks the old man would be less irritating if he just stayed quiet. He jokes that this is why one needs a skilled master. The old man seethes with frustration, but can't do anything without a physical body. He laments his condition and wishes he could properly train Yeonho. While Yeonho lies around, he asks how the old man operated the stone gate. Baek Muhan explains he triggered a device using psychic energy, not physical force. This makes him realize something new, that he can still manipulate objects with chi. Laughing, he tests it out. Yeonho gets nervous as he sees this. When the old man levitates rocks, Yeonho backs away and tries to reason with him. The old man sends the rocks flying at Yeonho. From then on, training continues day and night. Yeonho practices swordsmanship daily and uses a special dream-based art at night. Over time, his life becomes fully focused on martial arts. 5 years pass quickly. One day, the old man wakes Yeonho up early. Yeonho is confused by the serious tone. Baek Muhan explains his lifelong pursuit of martial arts, how it led him to neglect family and relationships, and how that distance is why no one came to find him. He says that through Yeonho, he finally learned about emotion and connection. Yeonho senses something is off. The old man confirms it's time for him to go. Yeonho panics and insists the old man can't leave. They agreed on 30 years. But the old man reveals he used up his energy maintaining the elixir that allowed Yeonho to survive without food. There's no energy left. Yeonho is upset, saying he would have left and returned if he had known. The old man doubts Yeonho would have come back. Still, he expresses gratitude for their time and says his hope is that Yeonho will explore the world, learn from it, and not repeat his mistakes. He tells Yeonho that even if no one remembers him, his teachings live on in Yeonho's swordsmanship. As the old man fades away, his last words to Yeonho are to be happy. Yeonho, crying, says the old man could have at least warned him. Back in the present, Yeonho is annoyed. He finds a cloth the old man left behind, covered in writing. It explains that Yeonho's martial arts are still incomplete, and the elixir in his body is a double-edged sword. If he doesn't keep training fast enough, it'll kill him. Frustrated, Yeonho curses the old man. Another note tells him to travel and experience the world. That's how he'll grow further. The script ends with Yeonho realizing that the journey isn't over, and the old man made sure he wouldn't slack off again. The old man advises Yeonho not to be content with living a limited life in a small place. Baek Muhan also encourages him to broaden his vision, to see more, experience more, and become someone capable of greater things. As a starting point, Yeonho is told to go to a place called Ruin to find the world's greatest scholar and stay with him. It's expected that Yeonho will learn and feel something important through that experience. Yeonho reflects on this. Though he initially intended to return home, he decides to delay that plan until he settles what he needs to. With resolve, he bows deeply to his master and then sets off for Ruin. Outside the cave, Baek Muhan reappears and bursts into laughter, mocking Yeonho in his usual rough manner. He calls Yeonho a fool and says that if Yeonho doesn't learn more about the world, he'll waste away like a dried-up mummy. He insists that martial arts developed in isolation have no value. To Baek Muhan, letting Yeonho stay tucked away in some remote place would be a loss. With a content expression, he says it would be a waste of Yeonho's martial talent. The story moves to the city of Kiang. Yeonho is visibly thin from starvation, looking skeletal. He approaches a beggar who turns out to be Jangyul, the branch leader of the beggar sect in this area. Jangyul is taken aback by Yeonho's appearance and internally wonders who this dried-up person is. Yeonho says he came with a question, but Jangyul immediately asks for money in exchange. When Yeonho questions if payment is necessary, Jangyul tells him that nothing in the world is free. Though he considers helping Yeonho out of professional respect, he sticks to the rules of his organization. Jangyul assumes Yeonho is a beggar and says so. Yeonho questions the assumption, but Jangyul replies that anyone who begs is, by definition, a beggar. He even jokes that Yeonho could make money just by sitting on a street corner. Then, unexpectedly, Yeonho asks if Yeonho wants to work with him. Later, we see a pile of money in front of Yeonho. Yeonho is thrilled. They've earned 6 months' worth of operating funds in just half a day. He calls Yeonho the god of wealth and is ready to give him the information he asked for. Yeonho wants detailed info about famous scholars and blacksmiths, their locations, hobbies, and specialties. Yeonho says it'll take 7 days and asks Yeonho to return. Yeonho replies that he has nowhere to go and nothing else to do, so he'll wait right there. Yeonho agrees, something he soon comes to regret. A few days pass, and another beggar runs up to Yeonho, saying they're in trouble. When Yeonho asks what kind of trouble beggars could possibly face, the beggar explains they are on the verge of starvation. He leads Yeonho to the source of the problem. There, Yeonho finds a crowd tossing coins at Yeonho, who's just sitting on the roadside. People are saying that if you want to be a beggar, you should at least reach Yeonho's level. Yeonho is both stunned and unsettled by how quickly Yeonho has taken over the streets. Yeonho, now acting comfortably, complains that he's thirsty and asks Yeonho to bring water. When served, he complains about the bowl being dirty and the water being lukewarm. Yeonho scolds his subordinates and tells them to bring cold water from mountains. Yeonho lounges and mutters how nice it is, further frustrating Yeonho. Yeonho feels humiliated. As a branch leader, he's now forced to serve someone he sees as an upstart. Yet, he knows that kicking Yeonho out would demoralize his whole group. He's increasingly desperate for the information to arrive. When the documents finally come, a beggar rushes in with them, and Yeonho is visibly relieved. But Yeonho reviews the contents and is disappointed. He asks if this incomplete report is really what Yeonho wants to sell. Yeonho takes a look and realizes that the information is only partially complete, less than half of what was requested. He worries that this may have been intentional and decides to take Yeonho elsewhere to complete the task. They arrive at another location, where a woman greets Yeonho sarcastically, calling him Foxdog. This is Gaenong, the branch leader of the House Sect in Kyang. She notes the rarity of Yeonho visiting her organization, given that the House Sect and Beggar Sect are rivals. She wants to know why he's come. Yeonho says he isn't here on behalf of his sect, but as an individual bringing a client. Yeonho continues to tease Yeonho, calling him Branch Leader Dog, which catches Gui's attention. She becomes suspicious and offended, thinking this could be an insult or provocation. Gai refuses to offer information to the Beggar Sect. Yeonho clarifies that he isn't part of them. Gai is still wary and warns them not to insult her sect. Yeonho criticizes her professionalism, pointing out that if she's selling intelligence, she should at least know who her clients are. This angers her, and she calls in her subordinate, Gongmu, to identify Yeonho. Gongmu reports that Yeonho is not from the Beggar Sect. Still irritated, Gai refuses to help and tells them to leave. Yeonho remarks that she's turning away a paying customer, which he sees as bad business sense. Gai warns him to watch his mouth, threatening violence. Yeonho calls her an old lady, provoking her further. Gai orders Gongmu to teach Yeonho a lesson. As Gongmu lunges, Yeonho effortlessly counters, knocking him out in one blow. Everyone is shocked. Gai realizes that Yeonho is a martial master. He apologizes and says it was just reflex. Yeonho, who had suspected Yeonho had some training, now fully understands that Yeonho is far stronger than he thought. Yeonho himself casually blames it on the old man. Gai, now visibly shaken, quickly shifts her stance. She acknowledges that they may not have come with hostile intentions and asks what Yeonho wants. His voice booming as he commands everyone to freeze. But his aggressive stance quickly fades. He apologizes to the lady in charge, admitting that he isn't a killer and has no intention of harming anyone. Both the beggar and the lady stare, shocked by the sudden shift in his demeanor. The woman's mind races, sensing a powerful, unusual aura surrounding him. An old lesson from his master flashes through the protagonist's mind, a reminder that a person willing to attack once will likely do so again. He explains this to the lady, noting that while he disliked the old man, his words were never wrong. The woman realizes the gravity of the situation. She now believes she has severely misjudged him and is in over her head. The protagonist takes a moment to compose himself, his thoughts turning inward. He understands that a single mistake could lead to the downfall of the entire house sect. With a newfound respect, the lady asks him what he wants. He answers simply, information. She presses for more details, confirming she has the papers he's looking for. He points to the blank spots on the documents, asking her to fill them in. She is taken aback, thinking it's absurd that a powerful person like him was needed for such a simple task. She concludes that the sect is overcomplicating things. She assures him the task is not difficult and asks if he can wait while she completes it. He agrees, and she promises to return in 15 minutes. The lady then turns her attention to the beggar leader, summoning him to her. The beggar leader is overjoyed, his face lighting up with excitement. The protagonist, seeing the beggar's expression, bursts into laughter, teasing him about looking like a dumpling and questioning if the lady had beaten him. Beggar leader cuts off the protagonist, telling him to be quiet. Annoyed, the protagonist mocks the beggar sect, suggesting it must be weak if its leader is getting beaten up by the house sect. The beggar leader becomes defensive, asking if the protagonist thinks the woman is just an ordinary member of the house sect. The beggar leader shouts that she is the daughter of the house sect's leader, the sect's future heir. He explains that she grew up eating rare miracle medicines and other luxuries. He throws his hands up in frustration, asking how he could possibly be a match for her. Just then, the lady returns, holding the information. The protagonist thanks her, but she responds with a serious tone, stating that the house sect has its own rules. The protagonist is confused, so the beggar leader quietly whispers to him that there is an information fee. The protagonist asks the lady how much it is. She quickly replies, 5 yuan. Thinking this is a low price, the protagonist hands her some coins. The beggar leader gasps, revealing that a yuan is actually a silver niang, an extremely valuable currency. The protagonist is shocked. He questions why the fee is so high, and the lady explains that the information was highly secure and not easily accessible. The protagonist accepts this, but the beggar leader immediately asks where he's going. The protagonist replies that he has to go earn 5 silver niang. The beggar leader panics and grabs the protagonist's foot, pleading with him not to go. He cries that he brought the protagonist here for a reason. The protagonist, annoyed, asks what he's supposed to do instead. The beggar leader sobs for him to wait. It is revealed that the beggar leader, Jang Il, had to use all the money he had saved, along with what his companion, Wi Yeonho, had earned to pay the 5 silver niang. What he couldn't cover, he had to borrow with an IOU. He mourns the loss of his savings. The protagonist notices the beggar leader's tears and asks if he's crying. The beggar leader, frustrated, yells at the protagonist, calling him an evil bastard for forcing him to spend his entire life savings. The protagonist ignores the insult and focuses on the information, noting that it is incredibly thorough and far superior to the intelligence the beggars usually gather. The lady comments on the dynamic between the beggar leader and the protagonist, noting that they seem to be on entirely different levels. The protagonist then hands her a letter, asking her to send it to Guangdong and inquiring about the cost. She replies that the service is more expensive than using an escort agency, but she will do it in exchange for answers to some of her questions. She starts with his name. Wi Yeonho, he replies. She then asks for his age, and he tells her he is 17. The beggar leader is shocked, shouting that the protagonist is even younger than him. The lady's mind reels, surprised that he's only 17. She can't believe a 17-year-old could possess such martial prowess. She repeats his name to herself, Wi Yeonho, a name that seems familiar. A realization hits her, and she asks him directly if he is the second son of the Guangdong Wi clan. He is surprised and asks how she knows him. She explains that the Guangdong Wi clan has an outstanding request with the house sect to find him. The beggar leader is just as shocked, exclaiming that the protagonist is the younger brother of Sanho, whom he considers a friend. The protagonist is surprised to learn that the beggar leader knows his brother. The lady confirms that she will send his letter to the Guangdong Wi clan, but warns him that it will take at least 10 days to arrive. The beggar leader, frustrated, laments that he has been acting as a subordinate to a mere child. The protagonist reassures him, saying that after waiting 5 years, 10 more days won't make a difference. The lady then presents him with a special token, explaining that it marks him as a special guest of the house sect. She tells him that if he ties it somewhere visible, a house sect informant will come to him. The protagonist muses to himself about the kind of person who could defeat the Four Swords at 17. He then asks if the token and its services are free. She replies with a firm no. The protagonist thinks to himself that a person of that skill level doesn't exist in the Central Plains. The lady, hoping to build a connection with him, feigns disinterest, saying, "In that case, it's useless." Then, she changes her tone, offering to give him information for free next time. The protagonist, intrigued, asks if she's serious. She confirms that it's a special offer, just for him. The lady tells the two men that she doesn't want to lose a customer over what happened earlier. The protagonist laughs it off, saying that nothing really happened. The beggar leader immediately disagrees, complaining that his face is bruised and he's now broke. The protagonist dismisses him, thinking that the beggar leader is a loser, and this is a common occurrence. Outside the lady's house, the beggar leader argues with the protagonist, complaining about his lost money. The protagonist advises him that money comes and goes and that a beggar shouldn't be so greedy. "Tap into your beggar roots," he says. The beggar leader gets upset, realizing he can't beat the protagonist. He then asks if they can finally go their separate ways now that the protagonist has the information he wanted. The protagonist stops him, a surprised look on his face. He reveals that there's a new problem. The beggar leader, exasperated, asks what it is. With a smile, the protagonist admits that he doesn't have any money. The beggar leader curses to himself in frustration. Meanwhile, the lady gives an order to her servant, Gongmu, to send a letter to the sect. She tells him to report that the second son of the Guangdong Wei clan has been found and has returned as a martial master. The scene shifts to the Great Hanlim Institute. A man named Mun Yuan, the third grand scholar, is enjoying a cup of tea. His daughter, Mun Yunji, comes to him, telling him he has a guest. He's surprised since he has nothing on his schedule. She explains that the guest wishes to play a game of Go with him. Mun Yuan is intrigued. He greets the protagonist, assuring him he's not intruding. He confirms the protagonist's desire to play Go, and the protagonist replies that it's the only game worth playing. Mun Yuan agrees, offering the protagonist the first move with the black stones while he plays with the white stones. As the game begins, Mun Yuan thinks that he shouldn't expect much from the young man. He assumes the protagonist is just looking for a free meal, and he plans to help him afterward. However, the protagonist's first move surprises him. He is fast and deliberate, showing that he is no beginner. Mun Yuan is impressed by his speed and experience for his age. The two play back and forth rapidly. Mun Yuan soon realizes that the protagonist isn't just fast. There's a strange, almost demonic quality to his moves. He is in deep thought when the protagonist smiles and asks, "Aren't you going to play?" Mun Yuan's inner monologue reveals a shocking realization. He's a war demon. A player is deep in thought during a game of Go, questioning a move the protagonist has just made. He thinks it looks like suicide, but quickly dismisses the idea of it being a mistake. He recognizes that his opponent is the legendary Undefeated, and concludes that it must be a trap. The player cautiously avoids the move, congratulating himself for not falling for the protagonist's supposed plot. Meanwhile, the protagonist is internally frustrated. He can't understand why his opponent backed off and didn't take the bait. He just wants to lose the game. The opponent suddenly shouts that he needs to lose so he doesn't have to play Go forever and that he will intentionally lose in 10 moves. A few moments later, the opponent admits defeat. The protagonist sighs in annoyance. Afterward, the protagonist returns to his room, his back aching. He reflects on his failed attempts to lose, realizing that his intentionally stupid moves are only scaring off his opponents. He worries that more and more people will continue to show up to challenge him. He thinks to himself, "I'd rather do the laundry." Suddenly, he hears a commotion outside his room. A man named Manhwa is speaking to Mun Yunji. He asks her if she really doesn't want to marry him. She replies with a firm no, and then clarifies, absolutely not. Manhwa warns her that she will regret it, but she stands her ground. He then takes a more forceful tone, telling her that he always gets what he wants and that his current offer won't remain an offer for long. He questions whether she's willing to risk the Great Hanlim Institute's downfall because of her refusal. Mun Yunji angrily asserts that the institute won't fall easily. He responds that he can make it happen, and she hates that he thinks everything will work out in his favor. Manhwa coolly replies, "It's not impossible." Mun Yunji loudly and angrily rejects Manhwa once again, telling him it is impossible for her to marry him. She turns to leave, but Manhwa grabs her hand. She screams, demanding that he let her go. He tells her in a menacing tone that it's in her best interest not to anger him, warning her that he could take her right there and then. Suddenly, the protagonist appears and calmly tells Manhwa that his behavior is inappropriate in someone else's house. Mun Yunji, still frightened, glares at Manhwa. She then turns to the protagonist and asks if he's finished all his chores, as if surprised to see him. The protagonist takes her hand, looking nervous. He says he's been playing Go and asks to borrow something. He then quickly takes the cord she uses to tie her hair and removes the tassels from it. Manhwa calls out the protagonist for eavesdropping, but the protagonist apologizes with a smirk, admitting his lack of manners. He then points out Manhwa's own hypocrisy, asking if someone who truly cared about manners would act the way he does. Manhwa, seemingly impressed, calls the protagonist a genius of Hanlim. The protagonist thanks him, but admits he has no idea who Manhwa is. Manhwa begins to introduce himself, but the protagonist quickly cuts him off with a laugh, saying he really doesn't care. Manhwa praises him again as the genius of Hanlim, and tells him he should have just stayed and played Go instead of getting in his way. The protagonist smiles and replies, "What a shame. I'm really good at getting in people's way, just like right now." Manhwa, enraged, curses at him. A crowd of people has gathered, all of them avid Go players. They ask the protagonist if he's there to play Go, with one person enthusiastically requesting to play with him again tomorrow. He agrees. Manhwa, annoyed by the crowd, says he'll leave, but not without a threat. He warns the protagonist that if Mun Yunji doesn't agree to marry him within 3 days, he'll take matters into his own hands. The protagonist turns to Mun Yunji and asks who that was. She sighs and tells him that the man is Manhwa, the adopted son of a powerful imperial palace attendant. When the protagonist asks what he wanted, she explains that he wants to marry her, and she said no every time. The protagonist jokes that Manhwa seems like a good catch from a good family and determined. He then feigns a serious tone, asking her if she wants to die. She explains that Manhwa doesn't like her. He just wants to use her. Her father, the owner of the Great Hanlim Institute, has a powerful network in Rulin and is considered a perfect candidate for a political position. She reveals that her father hasn't taken a civil service role, not because of his love for Go, but because the eunuchs of the imperial palace are wary of him. The protagonist is surprised. He questions why the eunuchs would be wary of a mere institute owner. Mun Yunji explains that the Great Hanlim Institute is unlike any other. It is not affiliated with any other organization, which has allowed it to form deep connections with various groups. The eunuchs are in power because the forces of Rulin haven't united against them. She says that if her father were to unite the forces of Rulin, the eunuch's power would be threatened. The protagonist realizes that this is the reason Nak Mokpung's father is so desperate to stop her father from entering civil service. He now understands that Nak Mokpung's new plan, marrying Mun Yunji, would allow him to both neutralize her father as a threat and gain a powerful connection to Rulin. Meanwhile, Nak Mokpung reports to his father, Nak Gi, the head of the eunuchs. He apologizes for the difficulty in carrying out their plan, explaining that a so-called genius of Han Lim has appeared. Nak Gi scoffs at the idea, calling the genius a useless good-for-nothing who only plays Go. Nak Mokpung clarifies that the problem isn't the man himself, but the crowd of people from all over the nation who have gathered to play Go against him. He explains that with so many eyes watching, his actions are limited. Nak Gi accepts his son's reasoning, but reminds him that the mission to take over the imperial palace is not just for their sake, but is a direct order from a higher authority. He tells his son that failure is not an option for either of them, and that he is more afraid of disappointing this figure than he is of death itself. Nak Mokpung acknowledges this, and Nak Gi then tells him sometimes violence is necessary. Nak Mokpung is shocked, but his father clarifies. He should use the crowd to his advantage. Kill them all, he orders, including the genius of Han Lim. The scene shifts back to the protagonist. Someone calls his name. Hey, Mr. Y, open your eyes. He mumbles in reply, still seemingly sleepy. At the Great Han Lim Institute, two men, Wi Yeonho, the head of the inspectorate office and the emperor's younger brother, and Mun Yuan, are playing Go. Wi Yeonho asks Mun Yuan if he still has no intention of taking a government post. Mun Yuan apologizes, but Wi Yeonho presses on, emphasizing the need to maintain balance to counter Nak Gi. Mun Yuan remains silent. Wi Yeonho then addresses him directly, stating that Nak Gi's recent movements are unusual. He mentions unsettling activity within both military and scholarly circles, and widespread corruption orchestrated by Nak Gi. When Mun Yuan tries to interject, Wi Yeonho anticipates his question. Is he wondering why a eunuch, driven by past humiliation, would attempt a rebellion? Mun Yuan confirms this. Wi Yeonho then proposes an alternative. What if Nak Gi served a different hidden master? He explains that the eunuch's power struggles are far more complex than they seem. He finds it strange that Nak Gi, despite having no established foundation, managed to defeat all his rivals and rise to his current position. He points out the suspicious frequency of accidents and sudden illnesses that befell those hostile to Nak Gi, suggesting that someone might have paved the way for his ascent. Mun Yuan considers this, acknowledging that it could also be a coincidence. Wi Yeonho admits he thought so too until recently, but Nak Gi's latest actions have made him suspect a hidden hand. He concludes by stressing the vital need for Mun Yuan's help in uniting the scholars to resist. Mun Yuan says he will think about it. Wi Yeonho quietly accepts this, then shifts the conversation, asking about the talented individual Mun Yuan mentioned. Mun Yuan is surprised by the question, but quickly describes Wi Yeonho as an extraordinary person who seems to be hiding his true abilities. Wi Yeonho, pleased by Mun Yuan's praise, expresses his own curiosity and asks when he can meet Wi Yeonho. Mun Yuan replies that his daughter, Yunji, has likely gone to bring him now. Just then, they hear Yunji's voice calling, "Father." Mun Yuan turns to see his daughter and Wi Yeonho. He welcomes them in. Wi Yeonho asks if he was called. Mun Yuan apologizes for the early intrusion and asks if he slept well. Wi Yeonho promptly replies that he slept very well. The protagonist tells Mun Yuan that he could have slept better if someone hadn't poured cold water on his face, but laughs it off. Mun Yuan chuckles in response, relieved that the protagonist seems to have slept well despite the interruption. He explains that he called him to introduce him as someone. Wi Yeonho introduces himself simply as an old man passing by. The protagonist sees through this vague explanation and directly asks what his business is. Wi Yeonho replies that he's with the Han Lim Academy and simply wants to play a game of Go. The protagonist, however, immediately refuses. Wi Yeonho is surprised. He points out that the protagonist has been playing Go with all the other visitors. The protagonist clarifies that he's not refusing to play Go, but rather insists on respecting the established order. He tells Wi Yeonho that there are others who came first, and he must wait his turn. Wi Yeonho laughs, saying he can easily solve this problem by asking the others for their understanding. The protagonist counters that this isn't a solution, it's coercion. He points out that given Wi Yeonho's high status, others would have no choice but to agree, even if they aren't convinced. He emphasizes the importance of principles and promises. Wi Yeonho thinks to himself that the protagonist has more resolve than he initially thought. He asks again how his plan wouldn't work. The protagonist simply repeats that he must wait his turn. Just then, Mun Yunji steps in, telling her father she thinks she can solve the problem. She approaches the protagonist, her mind racing with his words about principles and promises. She offers to cancel all of the remaining Go games scheduled for the day. The protagonist is visibly shocked by her offer. He hesitates, saying that while it's tempting, he also has his own principles and duties. He then asks if she can cancel them until tomorrow. She sees through this and warns him not to play any tricks, telling him he has to make a decision now. He accepts her offer, saying, "The match I will begin." As they play, Wi Yeonho thinks to himself that the protagonist is the worst. He considers him to be all talk and no action, but is bound by his own code to finish the game. He decides to see what the protagonist is truly made of. The game continues long into the night. Manhwa approaches Wi Yeonho and asks if he's enjoying the game. Wi Yeonho simply hums in response. Wi Yeonho reflects on Wi Yeonho's Go playstyle, finding it incredibly ferocious and unlike anything he's ever seen, even on a battlefield. He wonders about the kind of life Wi Yeonho must have lived. However, he concludes that this brutal side doesn't align with the lazy man he's observed, and he finds neither version suitable for the talent he seeks. He tells Manhwa that the game was a waste of time and that he can't understand why he values Wi Yeonho so highly. Manhwa immediately responds, "Because I have seen it." He explains that during a particularly intense game, he witnessed a divine move, a moment of pure genius from Wi Yeonho. He had taken his eyes off the board, and when he looked back, he saw a fleeting glimpse of a selfless, focused expression on Wi Yeonho's face. Wi Yeonho questions if he saw it incorrectly, but Manhwa is adamant, insisting he couldn't have been wrong. Despite this, Wi Yeonho states that he still has no intention of using Wi Yeonho. He says his time was not completely wasted because he was able to see Manhwa. He announces that he will be leaving early the next day. Manhwa asks if he is that busy, and Wi Yeonho confirms that the atmosphere in the imperial family is not good. He internally laments the situation. A fateful night meanwhile, Nak Mokpung and his soldiers are preparing for an ambush. The night is perfect, with everything in place. Nak Mokpung gives the order to subdue and arrest everyone. The soldiers charge, and the Serene Institute is immediately filled with screams and the sounds of struggle. Nak Mokpung smiles to himself, thinking that they should have listened to his earlier warnings. He orders his men to arrest everyone, confident that not a single person will escape the Great Hanlim Institute. In the midst of the chaos, Wi Yeonho remains fast asleep. That's it for today's video. If you made it this far, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more awesome videos like this. Thanks for watching. At the Great Hanlim Institute, two men, Wi Yeonho, the head of the Inspectorate Office and the Emperor's younger brother, and Manhwa, are playing Go. Wi Yeonho asks Manhwa if he still has no intention of taking a government post. Manhwa apologizes, but Wi Yeonho presses on, emphasizing the need to maintain balance to counter Nok Gi. Manhwa remains silent. Wi Yeonho then addresses him directly, stating that Nok Gi's recent movements are unusual. He mentions unsettling activity within both military and scholarly circles, and widespread corruption orchestrated by Nok Gi. When Manhwa tries to interject, Wi Yeonho anticipates his question. Is he wondering why a eunuch, driven by past humiliation, would attempt a rebellion? Manhwa confirms this. Wi Yeonho then proposes an alternative. What if Nok Gi serves a different hidden master? He explains that the eunuch's power struggles are far more complex than they seem. He finds it strange that Ji, despite having no established foundation, managed to defeat all his rivals and rise to his current position. He points out the suspicious frequency of accidents and sudden illnesses that befell those hostile to Ji, suggesting that someone might have paved the way for his ascent. Manhwa considers this, acknowledging that it could also be a coincidence. Wi Yeonho admits he thought so too until recently, but Ji's latest actions have made him suspect a hidden hand. He concludes by stressing the vital need for Manhwa's help in uniting the scholars to resist. Manhwa says he will think about it. Wi Yeonho quietly accepts this, then shifts the conversation, asking about the talented individual Manhwa mentioned. Manhwa is surprised by the question, but quickly describes Wi Yeonho as an extraordinary person who seems to be hiding his true abilities. Wi Yeonho, pleased by Manhwa's praise, expresses his own curiosity and asks when he can meet Wi Yeonho. Manhwa replies that his daughter, Yoonji, has likely gone to bring him now. Just then, they hear Yoonji's voice calling, "Father." Manhwa turns to see his daughter and Wi Yeonho. He welcomes them in. Wi Yeonho asks if he was called. Manhwa apologizes for the early intrusion and asks if he slept well. Wi Yeonho promptly replies that he slept very well. The protagonist tells Manhwa that he could have slept better if someone hadn't poured cold water on his face, but laughs it off. Manhwa chuckles in response, relieved that the protagonist seems to have slept well despite the interruption. He explains that he called him to introduce him as someone. Wi Yeonho introduces himself simply as an old man passing by. The protagonist sees through this vague explanation and directly asks what his business is. Wi Yeonho replies that he's with the Hanlim Academy and simply wants to play a game of Go. The protagonist, however, immediately refuses. Wi Yeonho is surprised. He points out that the protagonist has been playing Go with all the other visitors. The protagonist clarifies that he's not refusing to play Go, but rather insists on respecting the established order. He tells Wi Yeonho that there are others who came first, and he must wait his turn. Wi Yeonho laughs, saying he can easily solve this problem by asking the others for their understanding. The protagonist counters that this isn't a solution, it's coercion. He points out that given Wi Yeonho's high status, others would have no choice but to agree, even if they aren't convinced. He emphasizes the importance of principles and promises. Wi Yeonho thinks to himself that the protagonist has more resolve than he initially thought. He asks again how his plan wouldn't work. The protagonist simply repeats that he must wait his turn. Just then, Yoonji steps in, telling her father she thinks she can solve the problem. She approaches the protagonist, her mind racing with his words about principles and promises. She offers to cancel all of the remaining Go games scheduled for the day. The protagonist is visibly shocked by her offer. He hesitates, saying that while it's tempting, he also has his own principles and duties. He then asks if she can cancel them until tomorrow. She sees through this and warns him not to play any tricks, telling him he has to make a decision now. He accepts her offer, saying, "The match I will begin." As they play, Wi Yeonho thinks to himself that the protagonist is the worst. He considers him to be all talk and no action, but is bound by his own code to finish the game. He decides to see what the protagonist is truly made of. The game continues long into the night. Manhwa approaches Wi Yeonho and asks if he's enjoying the game. Wi Yeonho simply hums in response. Wi Yeonho reflects on Wi Yeonho's Go play style, finding it incredibly ferocious and unlike anything he's ever seen, even on a battlefield. He wonders about the kind of life Wi Yeonho must have lived. However, he concludes that this brutal side doesn't align with the lazy man he's observed, and he finds neither version suitable for the talent he seeks. He tells Manhwa that the game was a waste of time and that he can't understand why he values Wi Yeonho so highly. Manhwa immediately responds, "Because I have seen it." He explains that during a particularly intense game, he witnessed a divine move, a moment of pure genius from Wi Yeonho. He had taken his eyes off the board, and when he looked back, he saw a fleeting glimpse of a selfless, focused expression on Wi Yeonho's face. Wi Yeonho questions if he saw it incorrectly, but Manhwa is adamant, insisting he couldn't have been wrong. Despite this, Wi Yeonho states that he still has no intention of using Wi Yeonho. He says his time was not completely wasted because he was able to see Manhwa. He announces that he will be leaving early the next day. Manhwa asks if he is that busy, and Wi Yeonho confirms that the atmosphere in the imperial family is not good. He internally laments the situation. A fateful night meanwhile. Mokpong and his soldiers are preparing for an ambush. The night is perfect, with everything in place. Mokpong gives the order to subdue and arrest everyone. The soldiers charge, and the Serene Institute is immediately filled with screams and the sounds of struggle. Mokpong smiles to himself, thinking that they should have listened to his earlier warnings. He orders his men to arrest everyone, confident that not a single person will escape the Great Hanlim Institute. In the midst of the chaos, Wi Yeonho remains fast asleep. Thinking about Yeonji, Mokpong decided that today he would teach her a lesson. Soon after, the masked men gathered all the scholars and tied them up. Confused by the sudden situation, Yuan demanded to know what was happening. Mokpong calmly explained that they had received reports of suspicious activity within the Great Hanlim Institute. According to the information they gathered, many people with great political and martial influence have been visiting the institute recently. Hearing this, Yuan angrily argued that there was nothing suspicious about it. With a smug expression, Mokpong responded that there could only be one reason for powerful figures to gather in one place. They were planning a revolution. Yuan immediately denied the accusation and explained that everyone had simply gathered there to play Go. Mokpong mocked the explanation, asking if he truly expected anyone to believe that so many influential people had assembled just for a game. Growing nervous, Yuan insisted he was telling the truth and said Mokpong must have heard the rumors about the genius. Mokpong admitted that he had heard them, but dismissed them as unreliable stories that could easily be fabricated. He then demanded to know where this so-called genius was. One of the masked men informed Mokpong that there was nobody else left inside the building. Realizing Yeonho had likely escaped before their arrival, Mokpong cursed him for being lucky, noting that escape would have been impossible after they surrounded the area. Mokpong then assured the scholars that if they were truly innocent, they would eventually be released and even receive an apology. At that moment, one of the masked men returned carrying a ledger, claiming he had found evidence of an agreement made by the revolutionaries. Hearing this, Yuan was shocked and immediately denied the accusation. However, Mokpong held up the ledger and declared that the proof was right in front of them. Yuan quickly realized they had been set up from the very beginning. The scholars desperately protested their innocence. Some claimed they knew nothing about any revolution and insisted they had never come there for such a purpose. Amid the chaos, Lai Huana suddenly stood up and remarked that the situation was becoming quite interesting. The moment Mokpong noticed him, his expression stiffened in shock. Lai Huana immediately ordered him to address him properly as the royal head inspector. The masked men fell silent while the scholars looked relieved, believing that Lai Wanga's presence would clear their names since he had witnessed everything himself. Mokpong quickly greeted him respectfully and claimed he would never have acted this way if he had known Lai Huana was present. Lai Huana coldly told him to stop wasting time and release everyone immediately. After regaining his composure, Mokpong calmly asked Lai Huana a question instead. When Lai Huana demanded to know what it was, Mokpong asked why he was planning a revolution. With a disturbing smile, Mokpong revealed that he had known about Lai Wanga's presence from the very beginning. Lai Huana was stunned by the accusation, but before he could react further, the masked men forced him to the ground. Mokpong explained that every revolution required a central figure, and it made far more sense for that role to belong to someone connected to the imperial family rather than a group of ordinary scholars. Furious, Lai Huana shouted that Mokpong's arrogance had gone too far. He demanded to know how Mokpong dared to frame him, and warned that he would never escape the consequences once the emperor learned the truth. Mokpong, however, calmly replied that Lai Huana misunderstood the situation. There would be no opportunity to report anything to the emperor because none of them would ever leave alive. According to him, the punishment for revolution was immediate execution. Mokpong further claimed they already possessed the revolutionaries' signatures, making the case appear undeniable in the eyes of the emperor. After explaining his plan, he burst into laughter. Lai Huana cursed him and declared that the heavens would never forgive such evil deeds. Mokpong simply told him to continue talking while announcing that the first person who needed to die was Yeonji. Turning toward her, Mokpong reminded Yeonji that he had warned her he would handle things his own way. He blamed her rejection for the fate awaiting everyone there. Mukpong then asked if she was willing to change her mind now. In response, Yeonji spat directly in his face and declared that she would rather die than marry someone like him. Mukpong's expression twisted with anger. As he touched Yeonji's cheek, he told her not to worry because he had no intention of killing her. Instead, he planned to make her wish for death. He promised to inflict suffering far worse than anything she could imagine. Desperate, Yeonji attempted to bite her own tongue, declaring that she would rather die than allow herself to be humiliated by him. Mukpong immediately threatened her, saying that if she killed herself, her father would suffer in her place. If her father also chose death, then everyone else there would be tortured instead. He continued by reminding her that the families of traitors accused of revolution were always executed as well. If she truly wanted to die, she was free to do so, but the others would simply pay the price for it. Yeonji gritted her teeth in helpless anger. Mukpong grabbed her by the hair and mockingly encouraged her to kill herself, saying he would only gain more entertainment from the suffering of the others. Then, while touching her cheek once more, Mukpong quietly asked if they should begin. Unable to resist or do anything to stop him, Yeonji silently prayed for someone to save her. When Yeonji opened her eyes again, her expression darkened. She saw Yeonho quietly trying to leave the scene. As he climbed over the wall and prepared to escape, Yeonji suddenly shouted his name, causing everyone to turn toward him at once. Caught in an awkward situation, Yeonho let out an embarrassed laugh. Confused by his reaction, Yeonji demanded to know what he was doing. Yeonho casually replied that he was obviously running away. When Yeonji stared at him in disbelief, he wondered if she disliked the way he phrased it and jokingly asked if he should instead say he was excusing himself. Yeonji angrily reminded him that he had learned martial arts and should be helping them instead of fleeing. Yeonho immediately refused, saying it was already difficult enough to keep himself alive and that she was greatly overestimating his abilities. According to him, the smartest choice in a situation like this was to pretend he had seen nothing. He even waved toward the intruders and told them to continue whatever they had been doing because he truly had not seen anything. Hearing that, everyone could only think about what a shameless person Yeonho was. Mukpong suddenly shouted for Yeonho to stop, warning him that he was already involved in the so-called revolution. He claimed the entire world would hunt him down and that there would be nowhere safe for him to hide. Yeonho casually replied that Mukpong could not be certain about that. Calling him a fool, Mukpong declared that although the world was large, there were eyes everywhere, and finding him would not be difficult. Still attempting to leave, Yeonho simply told him to try finding him later. Irritated, Mukpong immediately ordered the masked men to capture him. The masked men rushed toward Yeonho while Yeonji urgently told him to run. Hearing that, Yeonho looked confused and pointed out that she had been demanding his help just moments earlier, yet now she was telling him to escape. He asked what exactly she expected him to do. One of the masked men suddenly missed his strike and became confused, wondering if he had just seen an afterimage. In the next moment, Yeonho drove his elbow into the man's body and slammed him into the ground before casually muttering that this whole situation was becoming troublesome. He then remarked that Yeonji was a very strange woman. Meanwhile, the masked men ended up sprawled across the ground in awkward positions. The scholars were left speechless, and even Mukpong could not understand what had just happened. Realizing Yeonho possessed real skill, Mukpong admitted that he had abilities after all. Yeonho thanked him for the compliment, though Mukpong angrily clarified that it was not praise. Furious from the humiliation, Mukpong ordered another masked man to step forward and deal with Yeonho immediately. The masked man apologized for the delay and promised to handle it at once. Mukpong specifically warned him not to kill Yeonho because he intended to tear him apart personally. As the masked man charged forward, Yeonho suddenly stopped him and asked for a moment to retrieve his sword from his room. The masked man stared at him in disbelief and called him insane. Yeonho complained that the man already looked old enough, yet was still making such a fuss when a younger person politely asked to fetch a weapon. The masked man angrily told him to shut up. Looking around, Yeonho noticed a broom nearby and sighed that 5 years ago the world had not been this harsh. Picking up the broom, Yeonho declared that since they would not let him get his sword, he would simply use that instead. Enraged, the masked man accused him of mocking him, But Yeonho calmly replied that if he disliked it so much, he should have allowed him to retrieve his sword. The masked man then rushed toward him in fury, swearing that although he would not kill him, he would inflict enough pain to make him beg for death later. Still looking half awake, Yeonho lazily told him they should just begin already because he had only recently woken up and still felt sluggish. The masked man became even more enraged and charged at full speed, but Yeonho instantly struck him across the head with a broom, sending him flying backward. As the masked man collapsed unconscious, Mukpong, Yuan, and Lai Hwana were left stunned by the unbelievable sight. Holding the broom over his shoulder, Yeonho casually remarked that trash was best cleaned with a broom after all. The masked man soon regained consciousness but still could not understand what had happened. Pointing the broom toward him, Yeonho calmly told him to be grateful ended with only that much damage because it was Yeonho standing before him. He also advised him not to rush and recklessly. However, before Yeonho could finish speaking, the masked man cursed at him in anger. Yeonho immediately started beating him repeatedly with the broom, while complaining that he had only been trying to explain things kindly. The masked man quickly realized that Yeonho was unbelievably fast. Although he hated to admit it, Yeonho was clearly far more than a mere loudmouth. Still, the masked man reminded himself that in real combat, strength alone did not guarantee victory. He immediately drew out a deadly poison known as the seven-step soul-chasing serpent. Seeing the poison, Yeonho asked if the man did not think such methods were dirty. However, he casually added that poison would not work so easily on him. The masked man questioned whether Yeonho was immune to all poisons. Yeonho denied it, joking that he had never boiled and eaten rare ginseng roots or anything like that. Poison definitely worked on him. Before he could fully explain himself, Yeonho suddenly dashed forward at incredible speed. In an instant, he appeared directly in front of the masked man and knocked the poison dagger from his hand. Without giving him time to react, Yeonho followed with another attack. The masked man instinctively thought he needed to block it, but Yeonho immediately mocked him for believing he could actually defend against the strike. In the next moment, Yeonho's attack landed cleanly, and the masked man was completely unable to avoid it. The masked man collapsed onto the ground unconscious once again. Looking down at him, Yeonho casually remarked that his master always taught him one thing. Whenever an enemy looked like they were preparing something impressive, the safest option was to knock them out before they could finish. Mukpong could hardly believe what he was seeing. The man Yeonho had defeated so easily was Hyuk, the leader of the dark force his father had spent decades building. Yeonho then advised Mukpong that if he chose to back down now, things would end better for both of them. Instead of becoming angry, Mukpong slowly clapped his hands and praised Yeonho's martial skill, calling it exceptional for someone his age. Hearing the compliment, Yeonho awkwardly became embarrassed. Yeonji immediately questioned why he looked pleased after receiving praise from someone like Mukpong. Mukpong admitted it was unfortunate that Hyuk failed to defeat Yeonho, but from another perspective, simply meeting a martial artist like him made the entire situation worthwhile. He then openly invited Yeonho to work for him. Yeonho looked genuinely surprised by the offer, while Yeonji demanded to know what Mukpong was plotting now. With intense determination, Mukpong promised Yeonho unimaginable rewards if he joined him. He offered him immense wealth and enough power to hold the world in his hands. Yeonho then declared that any sensible and honorable person would never be tempted by such sweet words. For a brief moment, Yeonji felt moved by his response. However, Yeonho immediately ruined the moment by admitting that he personally was interested and wanted to hear the actual numbers involved. Yeonji instantly looked disgusted and told him he should just die instead. Lai Hwana also shouted at Yeonho, asking if power and money truly mattered that much to him. Without any shame, Yeonho confidently answered that they absolutely did. Surprisingly, Mukpong agreed with him, and even Yeonji reluctantly admitted that wealth and power were indeed valuable. Lai Hwana became flustered and quickly argued that he could also reward Yeonho. Curious, Yeonho immediately became interested. Mukpong mockingly asked what Lai Hwana could possibly offer. Although Lai Hwana was related to the emperor, he had already abandoned his pursuit of power and wealth. At best, he could only provide Yeonho with a government position. Mukpong, meanwhile, claimed that his father could give Yeonho limitless authority and riches beyond imagination. Yeonho bluntly told Lai Huana that he was clearly losing this negotiation. At that moment, Yuan stepped in and pointed out that helping evil men carry out conspiracies was completely different from exposing conspiracies. He then asked Yeonho whether his master had never taught him proper morals. Hearing his master being mentioned, Yeonho suddenly became serious and asked if Yuan truly wanted to know what his master taught him in situations like this. Yuan believed that because Yeonho constantly mentioned his master, he must deeply respect his teachings. Surely no master would raise a disciple with terrible morals. As all the scholars watched with anticipation, Yeonho finally revealed his master's advice. According to him, his master always said to side with whoever offered more money. Morals and reputation had no value because they could not put food on the table. If money was offered, the correct decision was to accept it rather than pretend to be righteous. Hearing this, Yuan could only wonder what was wrong with both the master and the disciple. Mukpong, however, praised the teaching and agreed completely. He argued that morals and recognition meant nothing compared to usefulness and loyalty. Once again, he asked Yeonho whether he would work for him. The moment the word work was mentioned, Yeonho visibly frowned and asked if he truly had to work. Yeonji quickly seized the opportunity and promised that if he sided with them, they would not force him to work at all. Instead, they would provide him with good food while allowing him to rest comfortably every single day. That immediately caught Yeonho's attention. Mukpong also realized his mistake and quickly assured Yeonho that he would not need to work either. He promised that Yeonho would still receive every reward he mentioned earlier. Yeonho excitedly asked if he truly meant it. Then he casually walked over to Mukpong, wrapped an arm around him, and praised him for being generous and manly. Mukpong awkwardly laughed along and humbly replied that he was nothing compared to Yeonho. Watching the two of them get along so well, Yuan, Yeonji, and Lai Huana were filled with silent rage and cursed Yeonho in their minds. Yeonho then asked Mukpong what exactly he needed to do. Mukpong let out another unpleasant laugh before calmly ordering Yeonho to kill everyone there. Since they were traitors accused of treason, execution was only natural. Looking toward the tied-up scholars, Yeonho casually repeated Mukpong's claim before asking why they had supposedly committed treason in the first place. Unable to contain her frustration any longer, Yeonji exploded in anger and shouted that there had never been any treason at all. Mukpong had fabricated everything from the start. She demanded to know whether Yeonho actually believed him. Yeonho pointed out that the situation looked convincing enough, especially since the ledger of signatures had been discovered. Furious, Yeonji cursed him as a complete bastard. After thinking for a moment, Yeonho admitted that killing them all felt excessive. Besides, he had never killed anyone before. Mukpong then decided to do it himself and ordered one of the masked men to bring him a sword. He calmly explained that although he disliked dirtying his own hands, punishment should never be delayed. Yuan desperately tried to stop him. He argued that Mukpong was supposed to be a learned man and questioned how he could commit such betrayal against the nation. Sword in hand, Mukpong coldly replied that everything he was doing was for the sake of loyalty to the country. As Yeonji cried out for her father, Yuan quietly closed his eyes and apologized to her, preparing himself for death. Just as Mukpong was about to cut off Yuan's head, Yeonho suddenly stopped the sword with one hand and calmly told him that it was enough. Mukpong immediately realized he could not pull the blade free from Yeonho's grip. Shocked, he could not understand how Yeonho possessed such strength. Mukpong then reminded Yeonho about the agreement they had just discussed, but Yeonho replied that he had not forgotten anything. He simply said he was tired of playing along. Yeonho then explained what was truly necessary for living a lazy life, avoiding troublesome situations altogether. He recalled how he once broke an ink slab his father treasured while his father was away from home. Yeonho had run away for 3 days, but those days felt worse than death itself. When he finally returned, his father beat him nearly to death. However, after enduring it, Yeonho actually felt relieved afterward. Lai Huana coldly commented that Yeonho's father should have killed him back then. Completely confused, Mukpong demanded to know what Yeonho was talking about. Yeonho then mentioned another lesson from his master. According to him, while people should never forget hatred, they also should never forget kindness. Anyone who failed to repay what they owed would eventually pay an even greater price later. Debts had to be settled before the interest continued to grow. Hearing those words, Yuan, Yunji, and Lai Huana began seeing Yeonho in a completely different light. Yeonho calmly declared that it was finally time for him to repay his debts. The others stared at him in surprise, while Mukpong realized Yeonho was openly declaring that he intended to stop him. Instead of panicking, Mukpong burst into loud laughter. He then asked whether Yeonho truly believed he had tried recruiting him because he feared him. Scratching his head, Yeonho admitted that it never really seemed that way. Mukpong immediately raised his hand and unleashed a massive palm of condensed chi. As powerful waves of energy gathered around him, he declared that if he truly wanted to, he could kill Yeonho effortlessly. He even told Yeonho to consider it an honor to die by his hand. Yuan and Lai Huana were both shocked to discover that Mukpong could also use martial arts. In the next moment, Mukpong unleashed his technique. Numerous giant palms formed from chi rushed toward Yeonho from every direction. While laughing confidently, Mukpong mocked Yeonho and advised him not to live lazily in his next life. However, as the attacks closed in, Yeonho casually remarked that the martial art looked strangely familiar. Mukpong became pleased, believing Yeonho had finally realized the power of the technique. Since Yeonho appeared skilled, Mukpong had used one of his ultimate techniques immediately, assuming Yeonho would not even have time to react. But before Mukpong could finish his thoughts, Yeonho effortlessly slipped through every incoming strike. Mukpong froze in shock. Before he could even understand what happened, Yeonho suddenly appeared behind him and casually asked if he was done already. Terrified and stammering, Mukpong questioned how such a thing was possible. Yeonho simply replied that he had watched through the entire process carefully. Without wasting another word, Yeonho kicked Mukpong hard enough to send him crashing into a wall. Afterward, Yeonho casually remarked that one kick was more than enough to clean up trash like Mukpong. The scholars could only stare at him in complete awe. Yeonho then began untying everyone. Lai Huana asked whether Mukpong was dead, but Yeonho said he had only kicked him lightly. Considering how much fat Mukpong had, he was probably perfectly fine. Yeonho then walked toward Mukpong while stretching his arm and casually asked whether they should continue where they had left off. Mukpong immediately panicked and shamelessly proposed, pretending that none of this had ever happened. Hearing that, everyone else became speechless. Lai Huana immediately rejected the idea and ordered Yeonho to seize him at once. Addressing Lai Huana respectfully, Mukpong desperately pleaded for mercy. Lai Huana coldly asked if he had ever seen the Inspector General allow a traitor to walk free. Mukpong then revealed his final card. If he failed to return, his father would realize the plan had failed and make one last desperate move. Regardless of the outcome, the imperial family would suffer irreversible damage. Lai Huana called him a wicked man. However, he also understood the danger of the situation. If this single incident pushed the conflict too far, the imperial palace itself could be drowned in bloodshed. Even if he tried to prevent it, the forces behind Mukpong's father would throw the empire into chaos. Lai Huana knew that a cornered enemy like that would only resort to even more ruthless methods. Mukpong then calmly claimed that this was simply politics. If the inspectorate overlooked the matter for now, they could seize weaknesses later and maintain temporary peace. After hearing him out, Lai Huana remarked that the eunuchs faction truly were like rats, always preparing countless escape routes in advance. In the end, Lai Huana reluctantly ordered Mukpong to leave while he still had the chance. As Mukpong departed with his men, Yeonho suddenly called out to him and offered a piece of advice. He recognized Mukpong's martial art as the art of flowing grace and admitted it was an impressive technique. However, because Mukpong was simultaneously maintaining a bone-shrinking art transformation, the effectiveness of the martial art naturally decreased. If Mukpong truly intended to fight Yeonho properly one day, he would be better off releasing the transformation first. Mukpong quietly replied that he would remember that advice for next time. Yeonho immediately answered that he would prefer there not to be a next time at all. However, Mukpong calmly reminded him that as long as Yeonho continued wearing that disguise, the identity of the genius of Hanan would remain tied to him. After the long night finally came to an end, morning arrived. Letting out a tired sigh, Yeonho declared that everything was finally over. He then noticed everyone staring at him expectantly. Ignoring their looks, Yeonho casually announced that he was going to sleep and that they could handle the rest themselves. Yeonji angrily asked whether he intended to sleep again already. Yeonho reminded her that she had promised him full board and lodging, so she would not dare take back her words now. As he hurried toward his bed, Yeonho warned Yeonji not to wake him under any circumstances because he intended to sleep straight through until the next day. Yeonji could not understand what kind of person Yeonho truly was. Her father and Wi Yeonho felt the same way. Even after the incident, Yeonho continued living comfortably without a care in the world. While Wi Yeonho and Yuan spent their days dealing with the aftermath of Mukpong's scheme, none of those responsibilities reached Yeonho. Every meal was delivered directly to his room, filled with delicious food, and nobody bothered him for sleeping all day. To Yeonho, it truly felt like paradise. 7 days later, Yeonji finally entered his room and told him to wake up. Yeonho remained motionless, pretending to sleep. Growing irritated, Yeonji shouted that he should stop pretending because she knew he was awake. Yeonho finally sat up and complained about what happened to his promised full rest. Yeonji explained that her father wanted to see him and told him to complain directly to Yuan if he had a problem with it. She also pointed out that after lying in bed for 7 straight days, he could hardly refuse now. Yeonho lazily suggested telling Yuan he would meet him later instead. At that point, Yeonji completely lost patience. She yanked away his blanket, causing Yeonho to fall directly onto the floor. Not long after, she dragged him to meet Yuan and Wi Yeonho. As soon as they arrived, Yeonji announced that she had brought Yeonho. Yuan praised her effort and told her she could leave now. Unexpectedly, both Yeonji and Yeonho greeted them as if they were leaving together. Seeing this, Wi Yeonho immediately became irritated and clarified that Yeonho was the one staying behind, not Yeonji. Pretending to misunderstand, Yeonho acted as though Wi Yeonho was asking Yeonji to remain instead. Yeonji angrily corrected him while Wi Yeonho looked close to exploding. After awkwardly scratching his head and forcing himself to calm down, Yeonho finally sat down. Wi Yeonho then presented him with an embroidered sword. Yeonho immediately grabbed it excitedly without hesitation. Curious, Wi Yeonho asked whether he even knew what the sword was. Yeonho honestly admitted that he had no idea. Wi Yeonho then asked why he accepted it so quickly without even questioning it. Yeonho simply rubbed his fingers together and explained that it looked expensive. According to his master, if something looked valuable, he should grab it first and ask questions later. Wi Yeonho tried explaining the importance of the sword, but Yeonho instantly cut him off and declared that there were no takebacks. He even warned Wi Yeonho not to act stingy, saying that a man of his standing surely would not take back something he had already gifted. Wi Yeonho clarified that he never intended to reclaim it, but Yeonho insisted it was too late anyway because he had already spat on the sword, making it officially his. At that point, Wi Yeonho finally snapped and shouted at Yeonho to listen carefully before he ruined his entire clan. He then revealed that the sword was the sacred relic of the inspectorate. Anyone carrying it would be treated as an equal to Wi Yeonho himself. Yeonho quietly examined the sword for a moment before asking whether that was all it did. He wondered if it had any practical benefits, like helping him buy food or a house. Wi Yeonho stared at him in disbelief, while Yeonho continued explaining that what he did that day deserved something more realistic. In his view, the world operated on give and take, and people preferred rewards with actual value. Awkwardly gesturing with his hands, Yeonho implied he was talking about money without directly saying it. Wi Yeonho clenched his fist and angrily asked whether Yeonho expected him to forget about the sacred relic and simply hand over cash instead. Yeonho replied that he would never say something so crude because he still had manners. Unable to contain himself any longer, Wi Yeonho hurled an inkstone at him. Yeonho casually caught it and immediately asked whether that belonged to him now, too, since it also looked expensive. Meanwhile, Yuan silently mourned the loss of his precious inkstone. After calming down slightly, Wi Yeonho repeated himself. The sword represented the authority of the Inspector General. Carrying it was effectively the same as holding an official government position equal to his own. Yeonho immediately summarized it as additional work. Wi Yeonho argued that it was a prestigious government post, but Yeonho insisted that government positions and extra work were the same thing. Frustrated, Lai Huana eventually gave up trying to explain and simply ordered him to accept it as something different. Out of respect for his elders, Yeonho reluctantly agreed to let the matter slide. Yuan then explained that the inspectorate had once sent secret inspectors throughout the Central Plains, but the position had remained vacant for a long time. He suggested that Yeonho take up the role. Holding up the sword, Yeonho asked whether the position really came with only that reward. Lai Huana immediately clarified that he had no intention of forcing Yeonho into actual government duties. The sword itself was simply a reward. He even declared that he would sell his own house if necessary to properly compensate Yeonho, while angrily calling him a stubborn turtle. Relieved, Yeonho admitted he had been worried things might become troublesome. That comment immediately made Lai Huana and Yuan suspicious. Remembering Yeonho's constant gestures about money, both of them realized he had likely been planning to sell the sacred sword. Lai Huana then asked Yeonho about his clan and his master. Yeonho calmly refused to answer. Lai Huana questioned whether Yeonho distrusted him. Then, growing angry once again, he shouted that despite knowing his status, Yeonho still refused to reveal his identity. With a completely straight face, Yeonho explained that the issue had nothing to do with status. The real problem was that he could not trust someone who deliberately hid his martial arts while pretending otherwise. He then directly asked Lai Huana how long it would truly take him to subdue Mukpong, 5 seconds or maybe only 3. The sudden question immediately caught Lai Huana off guard. Yeonho admitted that being forced to move according to someone else's plans felt unpleasant. As his expression turned serious and his aura spread through the room, he openly said he could not stand being treated like a piece on another person's chessboard. Lai Huana fell silent after realizing that Yeonho had seen through him from the beginning. After a moment, he finally asked whether Yeonho had known all along that he was capable of martial arts. Yeonho explained that he had found the entire situation suspicious from the start. While he understood that some people were deeply obsessed with the game of Go, traveling hundreds of kilometers just to play was excessive. Too many influential people had gathered there under the excuse of playing Go, making it obvious that something else was happening behind the scenes. That alone had already made him suspect a hidden agenda, and Lai Wanga's sudden appearance only increased his doubts. Then Mukpong appeared, and the situation escalated completely. At that moment, Yeonho realized he had to decide which side he would stand on. Lai Huana asked whether helping them had not been the obvious choice from the beginning. However, Yeonho seriously admitted that Mukpong's accusations had actually sounded more believable at first. Even if the ledger of signatures was fabricated, Lai Huana truly had been secretly gathering influential figures together. From an outsider's perspective, it was difficult not to suspect treason. Lai Huana then questioned why Yeonho had still chosen to help them. Yeonho admitted that it was because Yunji had called out to him. Originally, he fully intended to escape if he had not been noticed. However, Yunji genuinely seemed unaware of the conspiracy surrounding her, and he could not bring himself to abandon her. He added that his master always taught him that worldly matters and personal gains were important, but none of that mattered if a person could not even see the individual standing directly in front of them. Lai Huana realized that was why Yeonho had spent the entire incident carefully observing his reactions instead of blindly taking sides. Yeonho admitted that was true, though he bluntly added that the entire situation had been exhausting. He then directly asked the question that mattered most. Was Lai Huana truly planning treason? Rather than denying it immediately, Lai Huana asked what Yeonho would do if the answer were yes. Yeonho casually replied that he would simply return to sleep comfortably. Lai Huana pressed him further and asked if that answer would remain the same even if he genuinely intended to rebel against the empire. Yeonho sarcastically asked whether Lai Huana expected him to pray for the success of the rebellion. Lai Huana then questioned whether Yeonho felt no loyalty toward the emperor. Yeonho answered honestly that he had never received anything from the emperor in his entire life, so he saw no reason to feel loyal to him. In fact, he admitted he felt more favorable toward Lai Huana since Lai Huana had at least given him gold. The two stared silently at one another for a long moment. Then Lai Huana suddenly burst into laughter. He admitted that while he already expected Yeonho to be clever, Yeonho had turned out to be far sharper than anticipated. After calming down, Lai Huana became serious once more and swore on his own name that they were not planning treason. Instead, They had only been gathering strength in preparation against Nagji. Yeonho quietly acknowledged his explanation. Lai Hua then revealed the real problem. Nagji had already noticed their movements. Mukpong had not been sent to expose a rebellion directly. Instead, the true goal had been to force Lai Hua into killing Mukpong himself. If that had happened, Nagji would have gained proof that Lai Hua was secretly hiding martial arts skills while gathering allies in private. Lai Hua openly admitted that Yeonho's unexpected interference was what completely ruined Nagji's plan. After revealing the truth, Lai Hua bowed deeply toward Yeonho and apologized sincerely if it had seemed as though they were using him like a pawn on a go board. He explained that both he and Yuan had simply been desperate. Yeonho casually replied that it was fine. Lai Hua still insisted on asking him to believe his sincerity, but Yeonho simply repeated that it was fine. The conversation soon shifted again as Lai Hua asked whether Yeonho would consider accepting the position of secret royal inspector. Yeonho immediately made his stance clear, saying he had no intention of voluntarily taking on work. Lai Hua calmly responded that it did not matter because the world would never leave someone like Yeonho alone, no matter how much he tried to avoid involvement. Pouting slightly, Yeonho asked if that was supposed to be an insult. Lai Hua smirked and replied that it was not an insult, but the path destined for a hero. Yeonho rejected the idea immediately and flatly answered no. Lai Hua warned him that fate was not something a person could simply refuse forever. At that point, Yeonho stood up and announced that he was leaving. Lai Hua also rose from his seat and revealed that he too would depart that very day. Before leaving, Yeonho honestly admitted that he hoped they would never meet again. Lai Hua simply smiled and replied that he had a feeling they would. After Yeonho left, Yuan quietly approached Lai Hua and asked for his thoughts. With a grin, Lai Hua admitted that Yeonho had exceeded all of his expectations. He already knew Yeonho's martial arts were extraordinary, but he never imagined Yeonho would be perceptive enough to realize that Lai Hua himself was hiding his abilities. Lai Hua confessed that he originally believed he had discovered a dragon, but Yeonho was closer to a monster. If they were not careful, there was even a chance Yeonho might eventually devour them instead. Yuan calmly replied that the risk was still worth taking. Lai Hua nodded and added that Yeonho's martial strength was not the only frightening thing about him. He was intelligent as well. Lai Hua admitted that Yeonho was even more dangerous than he first thought. Yeonho had understood everything happening around him from the beginning, yet he deliberately chose not to act until the final moment. That combination of strength, patience, and judgment made him far more frightening. He then wondered what kind of person could have trained someone like Yeonho. Turning toward Yuan, Lai Hua ordered him to investigate Yeonho thoroughly. Even if they could not uncover anything about his deceased master, they at least needed to learn which family he belonged to. Yuan accepted the order without hesitation. Later that night, Yeonho rested alone on the rooftop beneath the moonlight. A voice suddenly called up from below, asking whether he was planning to leave. Yeonho sat up and looked down to see Yuan standing there. He replied that after being allowed to stay there comfortably and eat well, he would not leave without saying a proper goodbye first. Yuan pointed out that Yeonho had already planned to leave earlier. Yeonho admitted that was true, but he also confessed that he had learned many things during his stay. Curious, Yuan asked what exactly he had learned. Yeonho answered that he realized two things. First, even scholars who spent their lives studying books often failed to live according to the teachings they praised. Second, the world of Rulon itself was frightening. Yuan asked why he considered it frightening. Yeonho explained that among everyone he had met in the Jianghu, the strongest person he encountered turned out to be someone from Rulon. Yuan admitted that Lai Wanga's martial arts were indeed impressive. Yeonho smirked before directly asking Yuan why he continued pretending. Yuan was visibly startled and asked whether Yeonho had known all along. Yeonho calmly confirmed that he had. After sighing helplessly, Yuan admitted that things had become troublesome. He then asked Yeonho for a favor and requested that he keep his secret hidden because he genuinely wished to continue living as a scholar. Yeonho agreed immediately, but only if Yuan answered one question first. Once Yuan permitted him to ask, Yeonho explained that his master had sent him out into the world of Rulon to witness it for himself. He originally thought he would encounter justice or some great truth. Instead, all he saw was corruption and dirtiness. Yuan lowered his head before answering seriously. He explained that every person carried an ideal in their heart, but each ideal differed from another. Once those ideals collided, people realized they had to surpass reality itself to achieve them. Everyone understood that worldly attachments should be severed, yet untangling those bonds naturally took far too long. Many people eventually lost patience and searched for shortcuts instead, attempting to cut through the knot entirely. That path created arrogant individuals with corrupted hearts, people willing to sacrifice their own lives or even abandon those close to them for their ambitions. Yeonho then asked whether the entire world was truly like that. Yuan admitted that the imperial palace was even worse in certain ways, though he doubted the rest of the world was much better. Looking up at the sky, Yeonho confessed that he still did not understand what his master truly wanted him to see. The world moved far too quickly for someone as lazy as him to fully grasp. Yuan reassured him that there was nothing wrong with that. He explained that if the world moved quickly, Yeonho could simply follow it slowly. Those who rushed ahead might learn many things, but people who move slowly often notice details others overlooked. There was no need to force himself to understand everything immediately. He only needed to continue walking at his own pace and see the world with his own eyes. Eventually, the world itself would show him the answer he was searching for. Hearing those words, Yeonho's eyes widened slightly. Quietly repeating them to himself, he realized he simply needed to experience the world as it was while remaining true to himself. The moment he closed his eyes, a wave of enlightenment washed over him. Aura began surging around his body as he entered a deep state of meditation. Watching from below, Yuan smiled softly. In a single movement, he appeared beside Yeonho on the rooftop. After some time passed, Yeonho slowly opened his eyes again. Yuan asked whether he felt he had gained some understanding. Scratching his head awkwardly, Yeonho admitted that he honestly did not know. Yuan burst into laughter and assured him that it was perfectly fine as long as he understood things in his own way. Then, in another instant, Yuan disappeared from the rooftop and landed back on the ground below. Before leaving completely, he looked back one final time and expressed his hope that Yeonho would someday discover the answer he sought. Yeonho quietly watched him disappear into the distance before lying back down on the roof. Touching his chest, he felt that something inside him had changed. He wondered whether the orb his master once gave him had reacted somehow. Looking up at the full moon, Yeonho imagined his master staring down at him and asking whether he finally understood now. Turning onto his side, Yeonho softly admitted that he still did not. A few weeks later, Yuan entered Yeonho's room and found him lazily lying on his bed once again. Yuan reminded him that he had supposedly planned to leave long ago. Yeonho immediately sat up and claimed that since the day was already almost over, he would definitely leave tomorrow. This time, he insisted he truly meant it. Yuan dryly pointed out that Yeonho had been saying the exact same thing for over half a month already. Yeonho casually replied that delays sometimes happened. Yuan admitted that was technically true, but it was still becoming a problem. At that moment, a loud voice suddenly echoed from outside the room, formally introducing the Swift Dragon Escort Bureau and asking what cargo needed transportation. Confused, Yuan turned toward the source of the voice. The sound drew closer until the door finally opened. Standing there was Yunji. Yunji stepped into the room, pointed directly at Yeonho, and coldly declared that he was the one. Confused, Yeonho pointed at himself and asked if she truly meant him. An awkward silence filled the room until one of the escort warriors looked at Yunji and carefully remarked that the person she pointed at appeared to be an actual human being. Placing her hands on her waist, Yunji calmly replied that he only looked human. In her eyes, he was no different from baggage. Another escort warrior awkwardly explained that while the escort bureau did transport people, passengers were normally handled separately. Since this escort was meant for transporting goods, bringing along a person would be difficult. Yunji crossed her arms and assured them there was no issue. After all, livestock was loaded into cargo wagons all the time. Yeonho might appear human, but to her he was no different. She instructed them to place him on top of the cargo, feed him 3 meals a day, and promised he would not cause trouble. Then she offered to pay passenger fare for him. A moment later, she corrected herself and declared she would pay double instead. The escort warriors still tried to refuse, insisting that rules existed no matter how much money was offered. Before he could finish, Yunji loudly raised the price to triple. The warrior once again tried to object, but Yunji immediately shouted that she would pay quadruple. Without hesitation, the escort warrior instantly shook hands with her and accepted the deal. Another warrior approached Yeonho and politely informed him that they would take him along, asking him to come with them. Still sitting on his bed, Yeonho loudly protested and demanded to know whether Yunji was seriously planning to load him onto a wagon like baggage and send him away. Yunji looked aside and calmly replied that at least he was quick to understand. Watching the scene unfold, Yuan finally asked his daughter what exactly she was doing. Yunji bluntly answered that it was best to get rid of the freeloader as quickly as possible. Hearing that, Yeonho exploded in outrage. He complained that although he already knew the world had declined, he never imagined it had become bad enough for people to sell off their own benefactor like luggage after being saved by him. Yuan awkwardly admitted that Yeonho had a point. However, he also argued that allowing him to travel freely now could still be considered a form of repayment for the favor he had done them. Yeonho turned away dramatically and lay back down on the bed with his back facing everyone. Yunji then pointed out that if they continued leaving him alone, he would probably stay there until next year. In her eyes, she was actually helping him. Yeonho immediately sat back up and demanded to know how forcing him out could possibly count as help. Yunji reminded him that he once mentioned wanting to visit the Hubei Sacred Beast Pavilion. Yeonho froze in surprise and asked what she meant. She explained that the escort bureau's route passed through Hubei anyway, so he could simply travel with them instead of walking all that distance himself. Yeonho reluctantly admitted that her reasoning made sense. Smiling faintly, Yunji explained that the horses would do the work, the escort bureau would earn money, and she and her father would finally be rid of him. According to her, everyone benefited from the arrangement. After thinking quietly for a moment, Yeonho finally admitted that her argument was surprisingly convincing. Not wanting to hear more complaints, Yunji immediately ordered him to stop talking and follow the escort warriors. As Yeonho followed them outside, he quietly muttered that his mother always warned him never to follow strangers. Yunji reassured him that the men were trustworthy, their business was legitimate, and there was nothing suspicious to worry about. Although Yeonho still looked reluctant, he eventually followed along. A short while later, he sat atop the cargo wagon, resting comfortably among the goods. Looking around quietly, he admitted that he never expected to leave so suddenly. Standing nearby, Yunji and Yuan came to see him off. Yuan told him to take care of himself on the road. Yeonho then noticed Yunji smiling brightly and remarked that she looked extremely happy about his departure. Yunji openly admitted that she was. Yeonho then told the escort warriors to depart already. As the wagon slowly began moving, Yeonho lay back down on the cargo. However, before fully relaxing, he turned sideways to look one final time at Yunji and Yuan. Waving toward him, Yunji shouted for him to stay healthy. Annoyed, Yeonho yelled back, asking how she could throw him out and still tell him to stay well afterward. Yunji immediately fired back, telling him to fix his laziness while he was at it. Pouting slightly, Yeonho reluctantly agreed before lazily waving back at them. Once the wagon disappeared into the distance, Yuan told Yunji to come back inside. She agreed, though before turning away, she glanced one final time toward Yeonho's fading figure. As the wind brushed past her, a gentle smile quietly formed on her face. Some time later, the escort group stopped for a break. A stern-looking man approached the wagon with obvious displeasure written across his face. Introducing himself as Gokbang, the head of the Swift Dragon Escort Bureau, he looked up at Yeonho, who was still asleep on top of the cargo. He then asked the others whether this was truly the item they had. They had accepted. One of the warriors awkwardly confirmed that it was. Frowning deeply, Gokbang demanded to know whether they were playing games with him. He reminded them that transporting a person required entirely different preparations compared to transporting ordinary cargo. The escort warrior explained that they originally intended to refuse the request, but because it came from the prestigious Hanland Great Academy, rejecting it was difficult. Gokbang asked how long Yeonho had been in such a condition. The warrior replied that Yeonho had been like that ever since leaving the academy. Crossing his arms, Gokbang stared at Yeonho, who remained deeply asleep atop the cargo. He quietly thought to himself that never seeming to tire was impressive in its own strange way. Another warrior added that the academy only instructed them to feed Yeonho 3 meals a day, much like livestock, and assured them he would quietly behave until they reached their destination. Gokbang admitted he could not understand the situation at all. He called out to Yeonho, but Yeonho did not respond. Growing irritated, Gokbang knocked loudly against the crate beneath him and shouted again. This time, Yeonho slowly opened his eyes, looked down at him, and lazily asked what he wanted. Clearing his throat, Gokbang introduced himself as the head of the escort bureau. Yeonho simply responded with a curt acknowledgement. Gokbang then explained that escort bureaus existed to transport goods, not serve passengers. If Yeonho insisted on traveling with them, the journey would likely be uncomfortable. He asked whether Yeonho was still willing to continue. Yeonho calmly answered that there was nothing to worry about since he was apparently registered as cargo rather than a person anyway. Although Gokbang warned him again that the trip would not be pleasant, Yeonho casually replied that he could endure it. If all he needed to do was lie there quietly until they arrived, then it sounded worthwhile to him. Amused by the response, Gokbang remarked that Yeonho was unexpectedly optimistic. He then ordered the escort group to continue moving. Yeonho lazily waved at him and said he would leave himself in their care. 5 days passed after departing from the Hanland Great Academy. One morning, Yeonho woke up atop the wagon, stretched his body, and let out a long yawn. He muttered that his current situation was unbearable. Whenever he stayed awake, he felt bored to death, but whenever he slept, his fraudulent master appeared in his dreams to torment him. Cursing the Dream Lotus arts, Yeonho wondered how long this strange suffering would continue. He even worried that it might last for the rest of his life. Eventually, he gave up thinking about it, muttered that he no longer cared, and lay back down again. At the front of the convoy, Gokbang suddenly noticed movement within the bushes ahead and immediately ordered everyone to stop. Raising his voice, he formally introduced himself and requested whoever was hiding there to reveal themselves. Yeonho slightly lifted his head, glanced toward the bushes, and casually commented that it was probably bandits. Meanwhile, Gokbang's expression became tense. He quietly realized that the situation was dangerous. If the hidden figures continued delaying instead of revealing themselves, it meant they were either incompetent amateurs or extremely dangerous opponents. If they were merely inexperienced bandits, then the group was fortunate. However, the fact that he could not sense a single presence from the bushes suggested otherwise. Slowly drawing his sword halfway from its sheath, Gokbang loudly warned that if they refused to reveal themselves, he would consider it a direct attack on the escort bureau. The entire area fell silent as everyone stared toward the thicket. After several tense moments, the bushes finally rustled and a broad-shouldered man stepped out. The escort warriors immediately drew their weapons, but the man calmly placed his sword on the ground, bowed respectfully, and introduced himself as Paying Dog of the Hubei Punk clan. The moment Gokbang recognized the clan name, he returned the bow and asked why someone from the Punk clan was traveling through such a place. Picking up his sword again, while clutching his stomach, Paying Dog explained that enemies were pursuing him. He admitted he could not escape them alone and desperately requested the escort bureau's help. He further warned that the matter could eventually grow into a crisis affecting the entire martial world. Meanwhile, Yeonho simply watched the scene silently from atop the wagon. Much later in the future, the Divine Mad Dog would recount this moment to a historian. He described it as his first meeting with Paying Dog, the same man who once turned the historian away from his gates. At the time, neither of them realized that this encounter would eventually drag them both into a river of misfortune. Gokbang silently thought about the reputation of the Hubei Peng clan. People from that clan were famous for acting with their muscles before their brains, yet their sense of honor and chivalry was unmatched anywhere in the martial world. After thinking briefly, Gokbang agreed to help. He quickly instructed Paying Dog to hide inside one of the barrels before the pursuers arrived. Paying Dog immediately agreed and climbed inside, though a sly smile briefly crossed his face as he hid. Yeonho, who had nearly fallen asleep again, was stirred awake by the movement. Opening the barrel slightly, Gokbang quietly warned Paying Dog to remain completely silent. From inside, Paying Dog thanked him sincerely and promised that if they survived this safely, everyone involved would be properly rewarded. Yeonho lazily replied that rewards were meaningless if people ended up dead. Paying Dog was momentarily caught off guard. Yeonho bluntly pointed out that Paying Dog was dragging innocent people into danger. According to him, anyone with even a small amount of conscience would have simply walked away instead of involving strangers. After saying that, Yeonho casually declared that he was going back to sleep. From inside the barrel, Paying Dog quietly answered that he understood. As the wagon continued down the mountain path, Gokbang quietly thought that they were almost at the bottom. Fortunately, nobody seemed to be searching for Paying Dog yet. For a moment, he wondered if they had successfully slipped through unnoticed. Suddenly, a loud voice shouted for them to stop. The convoy came to an abrupt halt as men in green robes appeared from all directions, surrounding the escort group completely. The leader of the Green Forest Bandits stepped forward and pressed his sword against Gokbang's throat. Trying to remain calm, Gokbang quickly realized who they were. He respectfully introduced himself as the head of the Swift Dragon Escort Bureau and greeted the members of Green Forest politely. The squad leader immediately asked whether they had seen a young man dressed in red. Gokbang calmly replied that they had not encountered anyone matching that description. The bandit leader narrowed his eyes and warned that lying would only bring misfortune upon them. Gokbang insisted there was no reason for the Escort Bureau to lie. The Swift Dragon Escort Bureau had maintained good relations with Green Forest for years, so there was no reason to hide a stranger and create unnecessary hostility. The squad leader's attention then shifted toward Yeonho, who was still lying asleep atop the wagon. He demanded to know who that person was. After hesitating briefly, Gokbang awkwardly explained that Yeonho was a special passenger. One of the bandits questioned what exactly that meant. Leaning closer, Gokbang quietly explained that Yeonho was someone with a weak body and unstable mind who was being escorted elsewhere. According to him, there was no reason for Green Forest to concern themselves with such a person. The squad leader stared at him suspiciously and asked whether he was implying that Green Forest had no reason to make enemies out of the Escort Bureau. Gokbang quickly agreed. However, the squad leader coldly replied that the problem had already begun because of the man lying on the wagon. He pointed out that he specifically asked whether they had seen someone wearing red clothing. At that moment, Yeonho slowly sat up, removed his outer robe, and revealed the red clothing underneath. Calmly, he remarked that he had not seen anyone dressed in red. Gokbang immediately broke into a cold sweat, wondering if Yeonho was seriously making jokes at a time like this. The Green Forest squad leader pressed his blade harder against Gokbang's throat and asked whether they were trying to play games with him. Inside, Gokbang panicked, fearing the bandits might already know Paying Dog was hiding there. The squad leader then calmly announced that if nobody spoke honestly, they would begin killing people one by one. Eventually, someone would reveal the truth before too many corpses piled up. Hearing that, Gokbang immediately protested. Ignoring him, the squad leader pointed at one of the escort warriors and demanded to know whether he had seen the man in red. Terrified, the warrior stammered nervously before insisting that he had not. The squad leader coldly replied that death would answer in his place instead. As the blade swung downward, the escort warrior screamed in terror. At the very last moment, Gokbang grabbed the squad leader's arm and stopped the strike. Cursing under his breath, he admitted that the man they sought truly was there. The escort warriors and Green Forest bandits alike stared at him in shock. Meanwhile, Yeonho slowly sat upright atop the wagon. The squad leader asked what Gokbang had just said. Yeonho calmly answered for him. He confirmed that the man they were searching for was indeed there. Then, without hesitation, Yeonho kicked open the barrel hiding Paying Dog. Telling him he had been caught already, Yeonho casually ordered him to come out. Gokbang shouted in shock, demanding to know what Yeonho thought he was doing. Yeonho simply replied that enough was enough. According to him, there was nothing more foolish than risking one's life for another person. He then looked toward the barrel and asked whether Paying Dog intended to remain hidden until everyone around him died first. After a moment of silence, the lid slowly opened. Paying Dog stepped out from inside. The Green Forest squad leader mocked him, saying that if he had continued fleeing, he might still have had a tiny chance of survival. Instead, he foolishly revealed himself. Paying Dog answered that if he had not stepped forward, everyone else there would already be dead. The squad leader scoffed and asked whether he was trying to play the role of some righteous hero. Paying Dog loudly declared that although he might not be a hero, he was not the kind of coward who would watch innocent people die while protecting himself. He then turned toward Gok Bang and thanked him sincerely for helping him up to this point. However, he admitted that he would now handle the matter himself since the enemy's target was him alone. According to Paying Dog, once he stepped away, the Swift Dragon Escort Bureau should no longer be in danger. Gok Bang looked worried, but Paying Dog reassured him that he would manage somehow. In truth, he admitted escaping Green Forest had always been nearly impossible anyway. After hesitating briefly, Gok Bang finally wished him luck and prepared to depart with his men. Just then, Yeonho suddenly stopped them. He calmly stated that they could not leave yet. Confused, Gok Bang asked what he meant. Yeonho sighed and asked how the escort leader could be so oblivious. He pointed out that even Green Forest would hesitate before openly making enemies of the Hubei Peng clan. If Paying Dog died there, and the escort bureau survived to spread the story, the entire Peng clan would draw their swords and sweep through the mountains in revenge. At that point, Yeonho bluntly concluded that Green Forest would rather kill everyone present than allow witnesses to survive. The Green Forest squad leader slowly realized that Yeonho's words were correct. After a moment of silence, he admitted it openly. Gok Bang also acknowledged that he had not considered the situation from that perspective, though the logic made sense. Hearing that, Yeonho looked at him smugly and asked whether he truly failed to think that far ahead. Furious, Gok Bang shouted at him and declared that he would fix the situation himself since the entire mess began because of his decision. Watching him, Yeonho thought the man was ridiculous. Gok Bang had dragged everyone into danger by accepting Paying Dog in the first place. Yet now he acted as though he was nobly taking responsibility. To Yeonho, it was like pushing someone off a cliff and then throwing them a rope afterward while demanding credit for saving them. Paying Dog then faced the Green Forest squad leader and asked whether they truly intended to kill everyone there. The squad leader coldly replied that he had no intention of repeating himself twice. Immediately afterward, he ordered all the Green Forest bandits to attack. The battlefield instantly descended into chaos. As swords clashed, the squad leader warned Paying Dog not to blame him if he died there. Their blades collided violently, sparks scattering into the air. While fighting, Paying Dog bitterly realized how naive he had been. The martial world was far larger and more dangerous than he imagined. Ever since people started praising him as a promising young talent, arrogance had slowly settled into his heart like poison. Now, because of his mistakes, innocent people were being dragged into danger alongside him. Filled with regret, Paying Dog apologized inwardly to everyone around him. The Green Forest squad leader then swung his sword with full force, declaring that everything would end there. Just as the attack was about to land, a streak of blue light suddenly shot across the battlefield. The squad leader's strike was blocked instantly, and the overwhelming impact threw him backward while knocking the weapon from his hand. The surrounding Green Forest members stared in shock. Breathing heavily, Paying Dog looked around in confusion. Meanwhile, from atop the cargo wagon, Yeonho casually watched everything unfold. With a lazy expression, he muttered that the entire situation was ridiculous while faint blue aura gathered around his hands.